All right, this week's question of the week comes to me from a viewer who asked, what is the biggest mistake you ever made as a jiu-jitsu instructor or martial arts school owner? What was the biggest mistake? And sometimes when you get questions, it's like you have to go through your Rolodex in your brain trying to figure it out. But like this one, I knew the immediate answer to, because as a school owner, it was the biggest mistake I'd ever made. And even today, I'm embarrassed about the decision that I made because it was such a wrong decision and it cost me. And we'll talk about it. I'm al-Aziz, the owner and head instructor of Semper Fortis Jiu Jitsu here in San Antonio, Texas. And the biggest mistake I ever made as a jiu-jitsu instructor or school owner is it happened, it was probably in the first year or two I'd opened up the school. I used to give everybody a free 1-month trial, and I would loan you a uniform, and that's how I went about basically populating my mats. And then from that helped me build a customer base. And I think I've got a business. If you look in the business videos, you'll see I talk about that in one of the videos. So in the business playlist, how to start a jiu-jitsu business. So that was my thing. I was giving everybody free trials, and I had a purple belt in here named Jay. Well, we called him Jay, and he'd come to me from another school as a purple belt, and he was really helpful, really nice guy. And one day, a new student came in, and he was on his 1-month trial, and his name was Ian. Ironically, he's still my student. And Ian came in, and Ian was a black belt in a different martial art. And I always get the martial art wrong because I want to say it's either Tang Soo Do or Kuk Soo Won, but it's a Korean martial art. But in that martial art, it has some judo skills in it. So Iron was already a black belt in that art, but when you're training in here in jiu-jitsu, you're wearing your white belt. And I always encourage my students to start the rolls standing if there's enough room. So if it's a crowded day, I'm like, oh no, start on your knees. But if it's not crowded, like, yeah, stand, start the roll standing. So they started standing, and somehow the throw happened where Ian threw Jay, and Jay landed badly. I think some people said maybe landed on his head, and didn't lose consciousness, and the roll kept going. But clearly Jay was quite aggravated. And then quickly Jay got Ian's back, put him in a bow and arrow choke. And I think I was in the dressing room getting changed because I didn't see all this happen. I got the report from the people that were sitting on the bench who were watching it happen as they was watching the sparring. And when Jay got him in the bow and arrow choke, Ian tapped vigorously, as a good white belt should, or as a good black belt should. Like, you get caught in a bad submission, you should tap. And the witnesses said Jay shook his head and continued to choke, and he put Ian to sleep. And then he went into the dressing room, got changed, grabbed his son, who I think was about 5 years old at the time, and walked right out the door. As I came out the dressing room, I saw my wife trying to, wake up Ian, and Jay was heading out the door with his son. And so I thought, the white belt made a mistake, went to sleep, didn't tap in time. And so I asked somebody on the bench, what happened? And they're like, they explained it in detail that he got him in the bow and arrow choke, did not recognize or did not accept his tap, and intentionally put him to sleep. And then, without bothering to wake him up, got up, took his son, walked out the door. And so as soon as I heard it, I'm like, yeah, I got to kick this dude out of the school. This is crazy. Like, this is such a horrible act that there's no question I should kick this dude out of the school. And so Jay calls me and he's like, Saad, I'm sorry. I know I messed up. And I'm like, yeah, you messed up. And he's like, how can I make this right? What I should have said is, this cannot be made right. You're done at the school. Instead, I attempted to be merciful and said, here's Ian's phone number. You call him, you apologize, and you make this right. In my mind, I thought I was being kind and merciful, and I had already figured, Ian will never come back because what happened was horrible. And in all rights, I did not deserve to be Ian's instructor anymore because I allowed Ian to make the decision on whether Jay stayed in the school or left. And of course, that was a big burden to put on a brand new person. So he accepted Jay's apology and continued to come back and train. And Ian still trains with me today. And so does his wife and his 3 kids. And I'm incredibly grateful to that because honestly, I deserve to lose him as a student. And matter of fact, and I think of Ian because just a week ago, I promoted him to purple belt. So he's been a great student. He's been a wonderful friend. And I totally messed up that day. I should not have been so understanding and forgiving. And you might say, well, you know what? What's that old saying? What ends well, whatever. I can't even remember the saying now. But it didn't end well. Because when I look back on it, although Ian stayed as a student, the parent that told me about what had happened had 2 daughters at the school. And they don't train with me anymore. They left. And I don't know who else was on that bench that day that saw that and said, you know what? These people are crazy. These people are unethical, and left too. And I deserve to lose them because I made the wrong decision. And I regret it to this day. If I could go back in time, I would have done things different. And so not only, I don't know how many students I lost because I had chosen not to do the right thing, which I knew at the time the right thing was to kick this dude out. The easy thing was to let Ian make the decision. And if Ian forgives him, be like, well, you know, if he forgives him, then, you know, we can keep him. And then, I don't even think Jay does jiu-jitsu anymore. And then I ended up losing other students because of Jay. Actually, I ended up losing like a 10-year student, totally different incident, but ended up losing other students. And I'd still have them possibly had I just made the right decision in the first place. So I share this sort of vulnerable story because it's like, man, nobody likes to admit like they totally messed up. And I'm sure my kind YouTube trolls or even people that aren't trolls can light me up in the comments and be like, how could you make that mistake? How could you let him off after doing something so foul? And I deserve that. You know, so I share that with you because here's the deal with wisdom that people don't take into consideration. We would like to gain wisdom, ideally, you know, from a mentor or a teacher that shares with us a bad decision, a bad experience, and then learn from that person's mistake and then not make the same mistake. So that's what I hope you get out of this. Unfortunately, a lot of times you end up with white beards, no hair, and you end up wise because you made dumb mistakes like I did in this case. And that's how I gained my wisdom in that particular issue. Much preferable, please learn from my mistake rather than make the mistakes and then learn, which sometimes life's hardest and most valuable lessons we learn from the mistakes that we make. So that's the answer to this week's question of the week. You got any comments, insights? Feel free to share below. Like I said, I'm open. I realize I deserve some criticism on this, and I shall accept it. Your comments will stand. But what I want you to learn from it, whether you're an instructor or a school owner, that you always just have to do the right thing. And you know what the right thing to do is. It's not easy. Doing the right thing is not easy. It's not convenient. But when you know what the right thing to do is, you got to do it. Otherwise, it will cost you. And ultimately, had I done the right thing in this case, not only would I still have Ian as a student, but I would still have other people as students. And unfortunately, I made the wrong decision. So that's this week's question of the week. Got a question for next week? Feel free to fire below. Until then, ciao.